Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me for this special edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. Snow! There's been no escaping it in terms of its impact on our communities over the past few days. With the record snowfall that came down in many parts of Cape Breton Island and northeastern Nova Scotia, it's been dominating the news headlines. And for many of you watching this broadcast right now, there's also been no escaping the snow because some of you aren't even out of your own driveways yet. Well, municipal, provincial, and federal officials have been working hard to try to alleviate that situation, so we're speaking to them today on this week's edition of Telile 24/7 to get a sense on what happens when a major snowfall like this February snowfall hits our region. You're going to hear later on in the program from Richmond MLA Trevor Boudreau with the provincial perspective, and you're also going to hear from Cape Breton-Canso Member of Parliament Mike Kelloway about how the federal government and the Canadian military can help in times like this. But we begin our broadcast this week by speaking to Richmond County Warden Amanda Mombourquette, who has seen the impact the snow has made not only in her own District 4, but all the way across the county. We're going to speak to her now and get a sense on what happens from the municipal level, but also what doesn't happen on the municipal level during an emergency snowfall situation like this. So here's my conversation with Warden Mombourquette right now. And we're pleased to welcome back to Telile 24/7 to tell us how Richmond County is handling the snowstorm and the aftermath from the municipal level. We're pleased to welcome Warden Amanda Mombourquette to our airwaves. Thank you for joining us, Warden, on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you, Adam. It's my pleasure, of course.
Well, we wanted to bring you in partly because we wanted to get a sense of how the county is responding. Some things are happening that some people might expect. Other things are happening that might require a little bit more explanation. But first of all, I want to get just your overall impressions of this once in a generation storm, both looking at it from the perspective of the councillor for District 4, but also as the warden for the county. Essentially, what were you seeing when the storm started rolling in and the snow started piling up?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenging week for all of us here on Cape Breton Island, and Richmond County is no exception. I think things started on Friday. We had lots of advance warning. Have to say, with our weather forecasting, we had lots of really good warning that we're potentially going to be 80 to 100 plus centimeters of snow falling in the span of the 3 or 4 days. And so, kudos to the people who prepared for that. And many did, making sure that they were stocked for, a good, 3 days or so to be unable to get to grocery stores or et cetera. But the reality is that, the snow accumulated so quickly that I think the systems that people have relied on, like whether they have a four-wheeler with a plow or they have, a guy that they, with a plow truck that comes and clears them out, it just accumulated so quickly and in so many areas that it became impossible to keep up. And that, I think, took people really off guard. It took me off guard for sure. I've heard from people who said they were every 2 hours outside trying to plow a little bit to try to kind of keep up with it, and then eventually just overwhelmed. So, it's been really hard on people's bodies, really hard on people's gear, the equipment that they're using, and really hard mentally as well, especially for those who have been trapped inside their homes for days on end, right? It's been a really tough week.
The sense I get is that there are still parts of Richmond County and different parts of the county as well, too, where there are still people trying to get dug out, even trying to get to their street. Can you talk a little bit about some of the remaining problem areas for Richmond County, both inside and outside of your district, and basically what the county can do at this point to help people in these areas?
Yeah, we did have some really, I guess I would say high intensity issues, and that Dundee West Bay Highway area was definitely one. It took a lot of machinery to punch through there, finally, after days of waiting. The Framboise kind of Sterling Three Rivers area, that they had some challenges out there. Lordways had some challenges around Mackenzie Lane. We heard of Wall Street down towards Roberta area having some challenges. And it was just coming from everywhere, all over the county. We've about 2,000 kilometers, a little over 2,000 kilometers of road, I think, here to maintain. So you can imagine the gear that we have in place to manage our regular snowstorms, by Nova Scotia Public Works. It was, it's up to the task of a regular snowstorm, but it is not up to the task of this, like you say, once in a generation type event. So right now, what I heard was a Corbett's Cove. I believe there's a grader in there as we speak. So, hopefully by the end of today, that road will be cleared of, to 2 lanes. I think that might be the last remaining one, but I would encourage your audience that if they are on a road that is still not cleared, or still, only cleared to 1 lane, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're passing information along. Our EMO is passing that information along, and they're asking us to flag priority areas, and that's what we've been doing as we kind of hear about them. So it's a communication system that's been working, I think, fairly well, given the pure intensity of the storm. Somebody asked me the other day, earlier this week, so how are you feeling about how the road clearing is going? And I said, well, I guess it depends on who you ask. Overall, when I look at it as the warden of the county, I think it's remarkable that Nova Scotia Public Works has made the progress that they were able to make, given the volume of snow and the constraints that they work within, which is not just about equipment, it's about people. People need to sleep. There's all kinds of challenges around logistically managing all of that. But if I was a person living on a road that hadn't been plowed yet, I would be telling you a whole different story, because it's scary, right? When you know that emergency services and the things that you depend on, like you can't get to them, home care services, other types of essential services. So these are things that become very personal very quickly to people, and it impacts people's health and well-being. There's no question. But I think overall, right now, we're in pretty good shape. Like I said, that I think that last road is being cleared. If folks have have other information, please share it. But at this point, I think we're kind of coming out on the other side here, and I'm scared to look at the forecast for next week. So.
Yes, our eyebrows are all up for that one. Yes, you're right there. Can you tell us a little bit about the process that's involved in getting the province involved? And this goes beyond getting Nova Scotia Public Works out there with their various machinery. You've kept us all up to date in terms of the individual problem areas on your various social media feeds, particularly on Facebook. And I remember a post from you saying that there have been requests that have gone in from the municipality to the Provincial Emergency Management Office, to EMO for Nova Scotia. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, but also about where these requests stand right now as we're speaking at just after 5 o'clock on Thursday afternoon? Basically, where are we?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely, I think, across Cape Breton, a cry for we need more help. And that all went through the Provincial Coordination Center, and I think you would have heard the provincial government speak to that. I know that there were several pieces of equipment from other regions, like the kind of the Western Zone, wherever, up here, working in Richmond County specifically, to help us get these roads cleared. I saw a great post from my colleague Mayor Pam Mood down in Yarmouth, who said help is on the way, and we're sending equipment up and people, and it was a real Nova Scotian response, I have to say. But we also know that through the province, the request went out to the federal government as well for assistance. And we're seeing the Coast Guard, cadets and all kinds of folks helping out with the clearing of roads and homes. At the end of the day, could more have been done? Always, there's more that could have been done. I've seen some pretty desperate situations in, for instance, the county of Antigonish recently, right? So, folks who are a quarter of a mile off of a road that's not plowed, and have lived there for generations and are stuck and no sign of anything, right? So it's been challenging. There's always more we could have done. And I would really encourage, I always encourage our EMO and provincial EMO, like every situation has got to be a learning one. There's a teachable moment in here, and what can we do better next time? We're never going to get it perfect, but I can tell you, this has been quite an event, and I can't say that I can't say enough about the men and women who are driving these pieces of equipment, because what a dangerous and stressful job. They have, they've had accidents during this event. They've gone off the road. It's been a highly, highly stressful situation, low visibility, high winds, extreme amounts of snow. So they have really worked so hard to get us accessible again and to make sure people were safe. So those calls for help, they were well warranted. And certainly is something that should we need to go down this road in the future, which I'm sure we will. There's climate emergencies are happening. It's definitely not something we're ever going to delay on, because the safety of our residents has to be our priority.
Now, are there any requests from the municipality to provincial EMO that are still outstanding? It seems like a couple of them may have been addressed over the last couple of days, but what can you tell us about where those requests are at this point and where they actually land geographically?
Yeah, so I think the road clearing requests are pretty much taken care of. We have been coordinating, though, the Provincial Coordination Center on, if there are folks who may need some wellness checks, so sharing that information with our provincial counterparts and making sure the local fire departments are aware, to make sure that as quick a response is happening as possible, right? As humanly possible. So we're trying to get, people kind of freed up and safe as quickly as we can. But also important for us, especially with kind of sharing that information with the PCC, important for us to be able to track that data, because we can't learn from these situations if we don't have the data, to fall back on and to help us, to teach us how we could be doing things better, or, in future, are there additional types of resources that we should have in place? Are there different ways that we could be communicating? So yeah, so I think we're in good shape at this point. But certainly, as I said, we only know about what we're told about sometimes. Although many of our EMO, what I would call our EMO network. So I would include our coordinator in that. I would include all of our local departments, RCMP, as they're moving through the community. That and they see issues, they're reporting them. Like about half an hour ago, I got a report of a person who had not been plowed out yet, and there had been no signs of any movement around the home, and so I reported that through our EMC. This is how we have to do this. We've got to all look out for each other and rely on our emergency network, really, to deal with not just not just people who live kind of in remote areas, but people who are living even sometimes right next door, and you don't realize, because you're so busy in the moment of trying to clear your driveway and check on your family, and you have to keep your eyes open for people, and really, really impressed with how our community has been doing that.
The next couple of questions I ask you, and these are questions that you've addressed as well on your Facebook and on your social media, are about why Richmond County didn't go in certain directions to respond to this storm. And one of the biggest ones has to do with a course of action taken by the neighboring municipality, the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, Mayor Amanda Mombourquette and her council, calling a local state of emergency there. And I think it might help some of our viewers to understand what a state of emergency would entail and what that would mean for Richmond County. So basically, can you tell us, as you did on your social media feeds, why wasn't a state of emergency called in Richmond County over the snowstorm?
Yeah, so I mean, our situation's a little different. Well, it's quite a lot different than CBRM. First of all, we have a much lower population density, we have a much lower business density, and most of all, this has been an event that has really been about the state of roads. The roads in Richmond County are almost 100%, but maintained by the province of Nova Scotia, which means that the municipality doesn't have any authority to kind of doing, any kind of maintenance. And the reality is we don't have any equipment to do any kind of road maintenance. There's no possibility for us to respond to road clearing for 2,000 kilometers worth of road. We don't have those resources in place, because our roads are provincially owned and maintained. So it's really like comparing apples to oranges. I totally respect Mayor Amanda Mombourquette, who made that call. And I hope that it certainly helps her community, because God help them, I think they got hit even worse than we did. But at the end of the day, mobilizing our EMO and working with the Provincial Coordination Center and working with our local fire departments. That was the most effective way for us to get things back on track as quickly as possible. So it really is a little bit like comparing apples and oranges, for sure. If the situation had been different and these were our roads to maintain, you and I would be having a totally different conversation.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the sense I got as well, too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that clears that up, Warden Mombourquette. Can you give us a sense now about comfort centers? And I know this has been an issue that the municipality has been working on with its emergency services coordinator, Stephen Marcellus, and various members of council and staff over the last few months. You addressed on your Facebook page as well, too, the idea that comfort centers are not necessarily the way that the municipality should or could go in the early stages of a storm like this. Could you explain a little bit about what you meant by that?
Yeah, we're really lucky in Richmond County. I mean, it's a big geography. We have over 20 comfort stations that are kind of designated throughout the municipality. I think almost all of them are run by volunteer organizations. So again, that volunteer network stepping up and keeping each other safe and working with our local, emergency management office to do so. The reality is the nature of this emergency is that it snowed people in and it made roads impassable or unsafe to be on. So opening a comfort center at a time like that, it's not responsible of us to do that. And it really is, it would have been practically impossible anyways, because the volunteers whose staff, who would come to open those halls or whatever, right? They were stuck as well. Our advisory was to shelter in place during the storm. The storm lasted for 3 days, and that's a long time for a lot of folks to deal with. And I think it brings on some social isolation. It certainly brings on a state of nervousness. Like I was getting really kind of antsy by that third day, kind of, thinking like, well, what if something happens? And what if something happens? And we were really lucky. There's no question in Richmond County, there was a low instance of 911 calls. And so I'm really thankful for that. But at the end of the day, for us to try to open comfort centers while we're advising people to stay off the roads, those two pieces don't really jive. We really needed people to stay off the roads. I mean, we saw cases where people would venture out. I had someone who lives not far from me do that very thing on the Saturday and then end up in the ditch. 911 is being called. We've got fire department, RCMP, paramedics responding, and thank goodness that person was okay. And I'm sure had a very valid reason for venturing out on the road. But at the end of the day, it puts a lot of other folks at risk when something goes sideways. And this storm the snow was accumulating so quickly that I think everyone on the road was at risk during it. So that was really what led to it. Typically in any, climate event that we have like this, certainly hurricanes, that tends to be true for all of it. We don't look to open comfort centers until after the event is over, because we do not want to put people in harm's way in terms of getting them on the road to one of those centers. So that tends to be how, we handle things. That's from my understanding, an emergency management best practice. And I'm no expert, Adam. I would definitely defer to our EMC, Steve, on that. But certainly that's been our practice. And, but like I said, there's always more we can learn from that. And so hopefully we'll, during I'm sure we will have a debrief on this. We've got an the municipal emergency management committee that will have this discussion in more depth, and we're always reevaluating those practices. So happy to hear from anybody who may have different opinion or some information that they could share to help improve practices. We need to be looking at continuous improvement all the time, because we're going to get more of these events, not fewer of them.
What do you personally take away from an event like this? And I mean, we may have covered this already during the course of the interview, but is there anything else that you like to add about what you, as not only the warden and the councillor, but also just as a resident of Richmond County, experienced during this kind of a snowstorm that came in waves, that is still feeling its impact as we go? Just basically, what do you take away from all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I know you've heard it from me before, and I sound like a broken record, but it's the people who rush in to help that, the volunteers who could stay home and safe and snug as a bug in their houses with their families, and they rush instead out of their homes to help people and shovel and and push cars, and they do what they need to do to help people get back on track. And I always find that when you reflect on these situations, it's almost a little bit overwhelming because there's less than 9,000 people left in Richmond County, but there still never seems to be any shortage of people out there who are willing to help and help things get back on track. There is a level of caring, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I would say the other thing that is that this storm in particular has left me with is um, you know, like I said, I don't think we can expect fewer of these types of weather events. We need to be very, I think, conscious of the fact that it's probably going to continue to increase in intensity for the foreseeable future. So that's going to mean that we have to have some hard conversations about, around, keeping people safe and budget time and what do we need to invest in, not just municipally, but provincially, federally. How are we mobilizing, and how do we make sure that our most vulnerable citizens are more connected, I guess I would say, to the recovery process, right? And so I definitely plan to be having more discussion on vulnerable persons registries, that type of thing, because we definitely have some room for improvement there.
All right. Well, there's a lot to unpack. Some would say a lot to shovel out in terms of a story like this and a storm like this. But we appreciate you taking some time and going through all of this with us. Warden Mombourquette, thank you for joining us once again here on Telile 24/7.
Thank you, Adam. Happy to be here.
Amanda Mombourquette is the Warden of Richmond County and the Councillor for District 4. We've been speaking to her at her home office in Grand Grave today. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment.
Now, as you've just heard from Warden Amanda Mombourquette, it's this area behind me that was one of the most difficult parts of Richmond County to clear out after the big snowfall, specifically communities in western Richmond County and along the Boudreau shoreline. Communities like Dundee, St. George's Channel, Roberta, the Points West Bay, and similar areas. When Department of Public Works crews arrived here early in the week, they brought a larger than usual snowblower with them. But that piece of equipment failed to operate right away, so it took a couple more days for Department of Public Works crews to be able to get the main road through this area straightened out. And even now, people are still digging out from their driveways and still trying to gain access to the main road. How is the province handling all of this, and how is the provincial government dealing with requests from municipalities? To be able to get some more insight on this, I spoke to Richmond MLA Trevor Boudreau, who is also Nova Scotia's Minister of Community Services. Here is our conversation.
And now joining us on Zoom from his office in Halifax, we're pleased to welcome back to Telile 24/7 the MLA for Richmond and Nova Scotia's Minister of Community Services. Trevor Boudreau joins us. Thank you, Trevor, for giving me some time here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Adam.
Well, it's good to have you, and we want to get a sense on your particular involvement as the MLA for Richmond and what kind of discussions you've been having with the various stakeholders here, the municipality, with the Department of Public Works. Basically, when did you get yourself involved in all of this as the snow was coming down this past weekend?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with forecasts, we were expecting some significant snow, and I would say it was definitely significant. I think here in Nova Scotia, we're used to having a couple of storms a week where you have 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters of snow, and then you have time to clean them up. This system was incredible, very powerful. It was long duration, so 3 days of really a snow event that certainly took its toll on the abilities of public works to keep up and the abilities of people to kind of keep up in their own way, I guess. But I was early on, like probably on Friday, I was kind of reaching out to neighboring MLAs, and the minister was in contact with us, just saying we're starting to look at sending more equipment up there. we're recognizing that there is going to be a bigger challenge kind of in northern Nova Scotia and Cape Breton. And so there were, EMO provincially was kind of starting to have those conversations in the Department of Public Works. And so having those conversations early on, but I was in constant contact, certainly with the local department, our area manager and supervisors, and certainly just providing feedback from what I was hearing and what I was getting on the ground, and relaying it to them. It was a monumentous challenge for our public works providers to kind of keep some of those main arteries and the highways open while understanding that people were snowed in their those side roads and even some roads, like I would say the West Bay Highway, where we had major drifts across the roads that really wreaked havoc on people and their ability to move around. And so, and again, like I have a great relationship certainly with council, the municipal council. So the warden and I talked quite regularly about what she was hearing and what I was hearing, and kind of giving updates to local department. But it was an all hands on deck approach, right? So obviously the province was involved, municipalities and local municipalities were involved, and just really want to give credit where credit's due. There's a lot of people helping each other out, right? We had a lot of private contractors doing a lot of opening up roads for us. We had neighbors helping neighbors, shoveling, and and that's still ongoing, right? Like we're still getting messages, we're still getting questions from residents about widening roads, and those types of things are going to continue. The department's goal was to certainly have at least one lane open on all roads so that people could get through, and now they're on that next step of widening some of those side roads as well.
Now, you mentioned the West Bay Highway, and I want to center on that for just a moment, because that seemed to be a good example in terms of how you were working with the Department of Public Works and with community leaders to try to open up that highway. I know it wasn't always easy. A piece of snow blowing equipment was brought in. Turned out that piece of equipment was broken. It needed to be fixed up. But by Tuesday, the highway was cleared up, and the Department of Public Works starting to work on some of the side roads in those communities as well. Can you tell me a little bit, just isolating that particular area, of what that process is like for you, working with Public Works and working with community leaders to try to make this happen and make the roads safe for people again?
Yeah, and I would say that's a pretty good example of kind of how things work. There were a number of other examples of that as well, certainly in the Framboise and Horseshoe area and other areas. But I would say in this particular area, it was identified pretty quick that the normal equipment that we would be utilizing for opening up roads was not going to be successful in opening up that road. And so quite quickly we had discussions about what's the art of the possible, I would say, and certainly we knew that we were receiving extra equipment from outside of Richmond, and one of those pieces of equipment was a loader with a blower, and like you said, it arrived, and the goal was to get that piece of equipment down to the Dundee area to open up those significant drifts, and that piece of equipment needed some repairs, and so obviously it was going to take some time for that. So conversations revolved around what else could we utilize, and so we were able to get a loader down there along with a plow, and the loader basically opened it up, one scoop at a time, moving from one part to the other, and the plow would go in behind it and wing it and open it up, and then grateful that was be able to happen, and then they could move on to some of those side roads there. But that was a coordination that I would say, the area manager and I, and certainly I would say, a number of those working in with Public Works, it was a team effort in terms of just identifying that challenge and looking for solutions, and that's really important when you're dealing with situations like this. So I'm really pleased at how we were able to manage that. Obviously, it took time to do, but I think we recognized it was an important thing to do.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the process involved in reaching out to the Provincial Emergency Management Office, and that's something that municipalities across the province that have been impacted by this storm have been doing. There have been a few areas that the Richmond Municipal Council have been reaching out to EMO to try to get some action there. Now, do you get involved in that particular process as the MLA, or is it strictly between the municipality and the EMO? Just basically what happens with those specific cases?
In this case, like, you know, there's a regional, like there's the provincial EMO, and then there are municipal EMO as well. So and they coordinate between. So there were regular meetings, is my understanding, between those groups to understand what the needs were and how. So those conversations were going independent of necessarily the MLA or even municipal councillors. We were well aware of what was going on and getting information from those, but that coordination, whenever there is a weather event, or whether it's a hurricane or whether it was floods and wildfires, or in this case, a snowstorm, EMOs are working with each other to understand what are the needs on the ground. And that's the really important part to, I think, understand is, as a province, that the needs are different depending on where you were in the province. So yes, that local information from the EMO and from municipalities is so important to identifying what are the needs and how do we help meet those needs in those individual areas. And so I think there's always things you say after an event that what can we work on and improve on. But I would say, generally speaking, I think our EMO offices, and I think the one for us here in Richmond, have done a good job of keeping the province informed, as I'm doing as MLA, with what I'm hearing on the ground as well.
On that note, Trevor, it's been literally a week since the snow started falling in this particular storm. We're recording this interview on the morning of Friday, February the 9th. What are you hearing, and what's your sense of where we are now in terms of the overall cleanup and about requests and concerns that you and your office are getting at this very specific point in time? Just basically, where do we go from here?
Yeah, no, great question, Adam. And I would say, you know, we like that work is ongoing, and very, the department is very mindful that there's still a lot of work to be done. When I had a conversation with the area manager yesterday, just talking about, you know, what are the plans and how are we moving forward? You know, the goal really was to get every road opened, you know, at least one lane, and that is on certainly opening up those lanes as well. We're getting, you know, certainly feedback from individuals, just about, you know, their local or their needs, their needs on their own properties. And so there are, you know, significant challenges for some in terms of moving snow. There are properties that have, you know, massive driveways or long driveways and may not have the capacity to do it. We're trying to help people navigate that. I think, you know, the municipality is doing a good job of identifying that as well. I think they've asked people to reach out to say if they're having problems, where you know, let us know so we can pass that on to the province as well. So what I would say is, you know, the goals for the province right now are getting those roads widened, getting those snowbanks pushed back further. You hear a lot about, you know, at intersections, you know, like there's a lot of snow that's there, and it makes them a little bit more dangerous in terms of getting out and making turns on roads. When we talked about that blower that was brought in, once they had it fixed, one of the number one things they did was on the highway on 104, they were opening up all of the entrances and ramps and that sort of thing to make sure that visibility was better. But, you know, there's more to do on that side of it to make sure our roads are safe and people can navigate them as best as possible.
So as we're winding down this conversation, Trevor, it's very, very clear that this is still very much an active reclamation project in terms of clearing away snow, getting people out of their driveways, getting people out of their own neighborhoods, clearing their roads. But at this stage of this process, what do you take away from all this as an MLA, but also as a person? You know, what are your takeaways in terms of what you've seen, the conversations you've had, and the overall effort to get people back out on the roads?
Look, I will tell you, you know, as the MLA in Richmond, I will say it's incredible. It makes me incredibly proud of how hard everybody worked together to kind of support each other. You hear of some great stories of neighbors helping neighbors, and the local contractors, and getting out there and opening up roads and helping our public public works crews, making sure it's safe for people to get out. And there's always the worry of when you have an event like this, the emergency situations that can come up, right? If somebody's has a medical response or emergency, and I would say, like, we were very attentive to those if those were needed, and I will say everybody took an active role. I would say, neighbors helping neighbors. I have a little tractor that I'm fortunate to have, and I was out. I think I put 15 hours on the tractor, just opening up driveways and stuff. But that is exactly what Cape Bretoners do, and I would say the people in Richmond, I give full credit to everybody understanding the challenges that we had. I mean, when you're kind of trapped in your house and you're feeling like you can't get out, it's a very concerning feeling. But people were very understood the magnitude of this and how much effort it was going to take, and it just goes to show how people coming together can really support one another. And kudos to everybody for how they responded to this. And it's certainly it's not something I'll soon forget.
Well, that's a good note to end this conversation on. And in the midst of all you're doing in terms of taking in a lot of this information and even getting out and doing some clearing yourself, we appreciate you taking some time, Trevor Boudreau, for Telile 24/7. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Adam.
Trevor Boudreau is the MLA for Richmond and Nova Scotia's Minister of Community Services. We've been speaking to him from his office in Halifax via Zoom. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment.
While this is considered by many to be a Cape Breton snow event, it's actually a snow event that has pummeled many different parts of northeastern Nova Scotia, including Antigonish and Pictou counties. And that means that the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso, Mike Kelloway, has seen the impact of this snowfall all the way across his riding. And as you're about to hear in this conversation that we're having for Telile 24/7, he even experienced it on a personal level. With an update on how the federal government and the Canadian military gets involved when a major snow event like this happens, here is my conversation with Cape Breton-Canso MP Mike Kelloway.
And now joining us from his constituency office in Sydney River, we're pleased to have the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso offering his viewpoint on this snowstorm. We're pleased to welcome back Mike Kelloway to Telile 24/7. Thank you, Mike, for giving us some time here today.
Anytime, Adam. Good to see you.
Well, first of all, you've been in your riding throughout the entire width and breadth of this once-in-a-generation snowfall. Let's start just basically for what it's been like for you on the ground and for the people in your office getting these calls and hearing about what's going on and experiencing it yourself, I might add. So can you give me a little bit of perspective from your part of Cape Breton-Canso, but also what you've been hearing from your constituents?
Absolutely. So as you said, I've been home and working from home. It was Sunday night. I received a call from the Prime Minister wanting a bird's eye view on the ground of what was happening, and he pledged his support for anything that we need. And we had a really good conversation where I talked to him about the impact of the storm, in essence, from Pictou County right up to the CBRM. Some spots received a lot of snow. Some spots received a lot of snow. And we talked about the complications that were happening at that time. And I stayed in contact with the Prime Minister's office, had some numerous conversations with the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Minister Sajan, who pledged his support. All the wardens, all the mayors and chiefs in my riding of Cape Breton, northeastern Nova Scotia, I've been in contact with multiple times, staying in contact. How it is looking on the ground is that it's slow in terms of the cleanup, but we're getting there. And I've talked to several other media outlets about this, Adam. In Nova Scotia, in the past year and a half, we've experienced once in a lifetime floods, fires, by the way, that cost lives, fires, hurricanes. And now, of course, this mammoth snowstorm. They're all connected in terms of climate change. And there is, I think, a collective anxiety when storms are being announced that are coming our way. But there's also a collective resolve The people of Cape Breton, northeastern Nova Scotia, I've been watching. I'm proud on a given day to be from Cape Breton, northeastern Nova Scotia. I'm even more proud in terms of our response to weather events, disasters. We come together. I've seen PCWs, personal care workers, getting on skidoos to go to their seniors, clients. I've seen neighbor helping neighbor. I've seen stranger helping neighbor. It's amazing what happens when we're tested, and we've been tested this time. 150 centimeters of snow in the CBRM. And then, of course, Richmond County was blasted. Inverness County was blasted. Let's not forget Antigonish County and Pictou County. Lots of snow. Lots of snow. But we're working closely on that. And I want to maybe, if I can, Adam, if you don't mind, to take our viewers into the process in terms of requesting federal assistance.
Yes, we'd appreciate that very much.
Yeah. So how it works is that, a municipality, let's take the municipality of Richmond County. This is just an example. This didn't happen, but this is how the process would work. Richmond County the municipality would assess a disaster or weather event, and they would go through a process by which they would reach out to their emergency preparedness office, emergency management office, EMO, which is provincial. The emergency management office, along with the minister, in this case, Minister Lohr and his ministry provincially, would assess the request. They would look at what is the need. Then they would look to see what they would do and can do provincially. Then they would make a request, if they think it's necessary, called the RFA, and that's a request for federal assistance. And it's based on needs. So it's like we have so many bridges down, we have so many this down. Then there's a negotiation process by which the federal government says, we can do X, Y, and Z. Now, in this case, a federal request for assistance from the CBRM went to the province, and the province then came to us. And we said we can provide heavy snow equipment from the Cape Breton Highlands National Park. We can provide air transport capabilities vis-a-vis the Canadian Coast Guard and 200 cadets, Coast Guard College, the cadets that could help in the cleanup efforts. And we can look to streamline public service and procurement services from a federal perspective to work with the same group provincially to streamline services so we can be able to perhaps put tenders out very, very quickly or forego tenders and reach out to the public sector in terms of plows and snow removal equipment. So that's how it goes. Now, EMO, that's provincial, calls the plays. They call the plays on the ground. They say there's a need here, here, and here. And then the federal government follows their lead in terms of the resources they've already committed. So that's how it happens. The federal government just doesn't provide services without that process working from the bottom up. And then we take our cues from the province. The province calls the plays in terms of where the resources are best utilized. And that's kind of where we are now. We have, I think, strong support on the ground. It's slow. I know people are frustrated, and I know patience is at a premium. But people are doing everything they can from a municipal standpoint, a provincial standpoint, and a federal standpoint. We also have a group on the ground, Adam, called Team Rubicon. And it's a group that we often work with during times of crisis. And they're a specialized group that are it's comprised of veterans from the armed forces. And I met these folks during Fiona. Impressive. Unbelievable. And they're on the ground too. So everybody's working together. That's a bit of the process. Hope it's pretty clear. Municipal goes to the province. Province makes a request to us. We do our best to fulfill it. We turned the request around in hours from the province to get these resources committed. But it's the province that calls the plays. And it's the province in consultation and collaboration with the municipality, and we're there to provide our resources as requested.
Now, Mike, from our vantage point in the Strait area, we are seeing that some requests have gone forward from the municipality of Richmond County to the provincial EMO to deal with a number of areas that have been problem areas in terms of road clearing, in terms of getting driveways cleared out, just basically reconnecting people to their communities. Have you or your office been hearing specifically from Richmond County, from the municipality, or even from constituents there looking for help? What's been the perspective there?
I had a great conversation with Warden Mombourquette early on as a check-in. She gave me a status report at that time. Haven't heard anything since in relation to an update other than the things that you mentioned around key arteries needing to be cleaned up and some people to get out of their homes for health purposes. But we're the texts and the emails and the phones are there. In terms of response from the constituents in Richmond, we've had some calls and in terms of the very thing that you just mentioned, talking about federal response and the process by which things can get cooking, and so people wanting to know the process, but also people just needing help. We circle back to the municipality and the province and say we're getting these calls from X, Y, and Z on X, Y, and Z street. They need assistance. They need help. And my office has kind of had a bit of a triage. It's a triage office now, taking these calls from Richmond County and Guysborough County, making sure that nobody falls through the cracks. Because my job and my office's job it's a leadership position, but it's also connecting the dots office, making sure that if we get a call, but we can't service a person's need, that we make sure that the local representation and the local authorities have that. And we've been nonstop since last Friday.
Now, you made the point earlier as well, Mike, that it's not a matter that this is simply a CBRM-centric storm, that
No.
The fallout is happening in Richmond County. It is happening in Inverness, basically all over your riding. There's still parts of Antigonish County and Guysborough County that are still snowbound to this day. What is it like for you as the member of Parliament to look at this riding that we've talked about, the size and the enormity of the riding in the past, but to see that nearly everybody here has been impacted by this storm? What has that been like for you personally?
Well, it's sadly, I'm getting used to working within a framework of disasters. And what it's like for me personally is, you feel for people. This is why I got into politics, is to help people. And in times like this, you want to help people right away. And because of the nature of these storms, you can't help people right away as fast as you want. So there's a bit of frustration on my part, because I want to try to facilitate cleanups in a day. Well, that's not realistic. So I feel for people. I feel for the grandmother that may be stuck in her home, that is going to have a difficult time to get medication or her medication filled. I feel for the young people. I feel for the first responders. My God, the first responders. There's people in the Port Hawk Strait Area Hospital, nurses, support staff that were there for days, and because they couldn't get home, but they also know they couldn't leave because they needed to be there. So you feel for people, but you also know that the reality is we're seeing more and more events like this, and it is because of climate change. Now, people might say, well, it's snow, it's not global warming. As we know, the atmosphere as the temperature rises, the atmosphere maintains a lot of moisture as a result. And if you go onto any weather network site or any reputable site on the internet, they'll talk to you about the fact that this storm is driven by climate change. So people in Cape Breton-Canso don't need to be told that we're in a climate crisis. We're living it. But now we need to adapt to that, and we need to mitigate that. And that's why I'm proud that we've passed several laws around disaster mitigation and responses to address these things the best way we can. But we are now veterans of the natural disasters within an 18-month period. Think about it, Adam. Think about your viewers now. In 18 months, fires, floods, snow, rain, unprecedented. It's not by chance. It's not by luck. It's because climate change and a climate crisis is absolutely focused on Nova Scotia, and in particular, Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia.
I want to circle back to a comment you made early in the conversation, Mike, your discussion about getting that call from the Prime Minister and being able to outline things as well for the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Harjit Sajjan, who was the Minister of Defense and, of course, was key in Canada's military before that time. What perspective do you think each of these men bring to this conversation, and do you feel they understand the enormity of what's happening here in Cape Breton-Canso?
Both do, tremendously. The Prime Minister has a great affinity for Nova Scotia, as his dad did. And there were many times that Mr. Trudeau, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, visited our own Alan J. There's a strong connection to northeastern Nova Scotia and Cape Breton with the Trudeau family and Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia. And there's a lot of things that I'll share with you in that conversation. The Prime Minister talked about just the community and the community response that people in Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia illustrate each time there is a disaster, a situation that requires people to work together. He commented on that particular and in particular, and I found that very interesting. And he was right out of the gate asking, how are you doing? How are your constituents doing? How are the people doing? And that was Sunday night. And so we were all still in the middle of that storm, two storms. And I appreciated the empathy, but the commitment to say, what do you need? And Minister Sajjan is working with Minister Lohr on getting whatever is needed on the ground. And that's, to me, take the labels of parties, the colors that represent the labels of parties. At the end of the day, leadership is many things, but leadership is also about empathy and action. Empathy and action. And I appreciate it that the Prime Minister illustrated both to me on that call. Minister Sajjan, what an amazing guy. What an amazing guy. He was up pretty much the entire night on Sunday, dealing with a lot of things in relation to what could be the federal response at that time, because we were waiting for the province to submit their request for federal assistance. He gets a call at 12 o'clock from the province. He answers the phone. He's not in bed. He answers the phone. He also is a veteran of Afghanistan. So he understands a lot about strategy and tactics, planning and execution. I'm so impressed with him. And again, empathetic. What a soft-spoken man, too. If you get a chance to watch Question Period, he's very soft-spoken, but the man has a pedigree as a former minister of the armed forces, as a member of the armed forces, and now here he brings perspective, and that not a lot of people would, because of his background. And he's been updating me on the phone before Question Period, after Question Period. And I appreciate that, because I'm not in Ottawa. I'm here. But in many ways, I'm glad I'm here. As I was during Fiona, I get my hands dirty. Later on today or tomorrow, I'm going to see if I can get out of my driveway and out of my off my street to say thank you to people that are out there working, not to get in their way, not for a photo op of none of that. Just to say thank you to some folks that are out there, like Team Rubicon, like the cadets, and for every single person that's watching in my riding, in our riding, that are just doing little things for your neighbor, doing a few things for a senior, someone in need. I have a guy on my street. His name is Vince. Vince has a day job. Vince also has a tractor. Vince has been going up and down our street, just clearing people's driveways to get them out. No one asked him to do it. He's just doing it. That's leadership.
I have a feeling we're going to hear a lot more of these types of stories as time goes on and as we continue to work at digging out of this storm. So just for clarification, you are still in your home office. Your own driveway hasn't been cleared yet.
No, well, I'll tell you this. Funny story. It wasn't funny at the time.
No,
because between you and me and your viewers, my snow blower died last Friday. It just died. And I invented a lot of new curse words as a result of it. So from about Friday up until about yesterday, I've been shoveling the driveway because it's a long driveway. And I finally got to the end of the driveway. Our street has been plowed, but the men and women that are out there plowing, many of them can only do like one strip. They can't do it. Like it's basically one-way traffic. So I think I can get out today. I'm hoping I can. But to the men and the women in every municipality, in the town of Mulgrave, in the town of Port Hawkesbury, in the First Nations communities in the riding, Wakaba, Butlatek, Buckankeg, that are working on the ground to clear the snow, a huge thanks. And the provincial folks, huge thanks. And for the federal folks, amazing. But it's going to take some time. But everyone just, keep doing what you're doing. I know it's frustrating because we want to get back to, everyday life. And we will. But know that everyone is working as hard as they can to clean things up. And also for the first responders out there, wow, amazing. Just amazing. But we'll get through this as we always do. And we'll get the resources there that are needed to help. And but I have a great appreciation for the Prime Minister, Minister Sajjan, who just said, we're waiting for the province. And once we do, we'll turn things around quickly. And they turned it around probably in about 6 hours in terms of the paperwork.
Obviously, this is an ongoing story, as you mentioned. It will be for quite a few days more. And in the middle of all this, Mike Kelloway, as you're trying to get out of your own driveway, we appreciate you giving us some time and some perspective here on Telile 24/7 today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam.
Mike Kelloway is the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso. We have been speaking to him at his still snowed-in home constituency office in Sydney River.
And there you have it. That wraps up this special edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a special thank you to my interview guests this week, Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette, Richmond MLA Trevor Boudreau, and the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso, Mike Kelloway. We're going to post all of these interviews individually on our Telile social media platforms, including our YouTube channel. And you can also find every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, on our YouTube channel. We offer the same service for our sister program, Roundtable, and you can also find all the French language journalism recently produced by the newest member of the Telile News team, Jacqueline Giroir. If you have any comments about what you've seen over the past hour here on Telile 24/7, or you'd just like to make suggestions for a future edition of the show, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcooke, Cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your ideas and your comments. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telile@telile.tv. We've already mentioned our Telile YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on other social media. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. For now, I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you once again for joining me for this special edition of Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.